Okay, go to start then.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody from London, and welcome to another Zoom event with Harif. We've had over 60 of these since the beginning of the pandemic. Harif, for those who don't know, is the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. On behalf of Lawrence, our technical advisor, and myself, I'm very happy to have you all join us for this evening. This evening is not going to be a lockdown lecture as usual, but it's going to be a conversation about the Forgotten Refugees film and where we are with the whole concept and the campaign. Just before I introduce our guest speaker, I just wanted to tell those of you who don't know that we have a website, www.harif.org. We aim to raise awareness of the history and culture of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. We have a sister website called Point of No Return, which is www.jewishrefugees.org.uk, and that keeps you up to date with the news. If you have any questions or observations for our guest tonight, please do put them in the chat. This evening is being recorded. It's being live streamed to our Harif Facebook page, and you will find the video on our video channel on the Harif website very shortly. So without more ado, I would like to introduce our guest tonight, Avi Goldwasser. He is joining us from Miami, and he was a co-founder of the David Project, an organization dedicated to teaching college and high school students about the Middle East conflict. In, I think, 2004, he was the executive producer of The Forgotten Refugees. And this film's been translated into 6 languages and screened in dozens of college campuses and over 30 film festivals. The film has won several film prizes, including Best Documentary Film at the Marbella International Film Festival and at the Warsaw Jewish Film Festival. I must add that making the film freely available without copyright issues has been immensely helpful to us. And for Harif, The Forgotten Refugees has been an immensely useful tool to spread knowledge of the 850,000 Jewish refugees from Arab countries. And my Harif colleague, Michelle Huberman, and myself have shown this film dozens of times. So in the run-up to the 30th of November, which is the day to remember the departure and exodus of Jewish refugees from Arab countries and Iran, I thought it would be appropriate to talk to Avi Goldwasser, and just to say that he has retired. He used to be a financial executive, chief financial officer, and he has built an air base or 2 in Israel. I can't really list all his achievements here. So without further ado, over to you, Avi. I think we will start with a clip from the Forgotten Refugees film. Over to you.
Okay, so I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Yeah, can he share his screen?
Yeah, sorry, I had someone phoning, they can't get in. 1 second. Right. Okay, you should be able to share screen now.
You see it?
Can't see anything at the moment.
can't see it.
No, it says you disabled me.
No, I re-enabled you in case it didn't work, but it didn't work the
Okay,
first
I
time.
got it now. I'm sharing my screen. All right,
Okay.
can you see it? Excellent. All right, so this is just a short clip of a short clip of the film to get you a sense.
Wants to understand what is going on in the Middle East, they have to understand the Jewish refugees from Arab countries.
Buried beneath the headlines of the Mideast conflict is the forgotten story of the region's indigenous Jewish communities. In 1945, up to 1 million Jews lived in the Middle East outside of the Palestine Mandate. Within a few years, only a few thousand remained. The ancient Jewish quarters of Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad were once vibrant, bustling centers. Today, they are silent. This is the story of the thousands who fled their homes, who endured in refugee camps, and who today quietly carry the memory of a destroyed civilization.
Everybody already thinks of Jews as white Europeans. Not all Jews are European.
Lulwa Khazzoum is the founder of the Jewish Multicultural Project and editor of The Flying Camel, an anthology of writing by Middle Eastern Jewish women. Her father is a refugee from Baghdad.
When I sing traditional Middle Eastern and North African Jewish music, people will often say to me, "It sounds Arabic." And I say to them, you know, we're not called cousins for no reason. What is Middle Eastern North African has come to be known as Arab. And people forget that there are many other indigenous peoples from the region, and the Jews are one of them.
In the year 586 BCE, Babylonian armies destroyed Solomon's temple in Jerusalem and exiled the Jews of Judea to Babylon, modern-day Iraq.
My family is among the Jews who stayed on that land for the next 2,600 years until around 1950. Jews who stayed in the region are known as Mizrahim, which in Hebrew means Easterners. They either stayed on that land of Babylon, as my family did, or they migrated to lands throughout the region, whether it was Iran, whether it was Syria, Lebanon, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and so on, the entire region.
In the year 622, a new religion emerged out of the Arabian Peninsula. Within a few years, Arab Muslim armies had conquered most of the Middle East. Mizrahi Jews found themselves referred to by an Arabic word, dhimmi.
Ademi or Dhamma, depending on the pronunciation, is a tolerated people. It's people of the book, Christians and Jews, people who worship, practice the Bible. And according to Islam, this is a group that's supposed to be protected. What that means is, as Islam conquered the entire Middle East, North African region and killed people in the name of Islam if they would not convert, the Jews and Christians would be spared their lives. However, they always had to be both physically and metaphorically inferior. For example, a Jew could not ride a horse because then his head would be higher than that of a Muslim. Jews could not build a synagogue higher than a mosque.
Jews were always at the mercy of whoever the ruler was at the time. It just really always felt like an inferior, I wish I could say only second-class citizen. It felt more like 10th class at least citizen, constantly trying to compliment the Arab, trying to minimize yourself, you know, trying to ingratiate yourself to the individual or the community of Arabs.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Avi. So my first question to you is, you have an Ashkenazi name. Is there anything, you know, what made you make a film about Sephardim and Mizrahim?
No, it's an interesting question. I was born in Poland after the war. My parents are Holocaust survivors. And at the age of 2, they survived in Russia. They weren't in camps. And at the age of 2, they came to Israel. I lived in a Mabarot initially, and I grew up in Israel in the 50s. And I remember seeing all these refugees coming in from our countries, from Morocco, especially. It was a big group. And then at the age of 12, my parents came to New York City. I didn't go to Jewish schools in America. I went to Hebrew school, Israeli school, and I went to college. And I didn't know the story completely till we founded the David Project, which was an organization, as you mentioned, with a mission to educate and support Jewish students on college campuses, which was becoming a hostile environment for pro-Israel Jewish students. And I actually met someone who, his name is Yoni Barudi, whose grandfather was a rabbi in Iraq. And I learned the story, and I was a bit annoyed that somehow I never heard of it. How come my education was incomplete that way? I used to go to synagogues, but no one ever talked. I mean, I just didn't know the story. I was vague. So I was sort of fascinated with it. So that was one data point. The second data point was that I was trying to understand, how do we reach college students to help them better understand the nature of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And I literally spent a year on college campuses. In other words, I needed to experience it myself. I went to rallies, I went to protests, I talked to students, and it occurred to me that the Zionist narrative has been lost, that the Jewish students cannot win an argument by going with the traditional narrative, which is, God gave me the land, and the response was, God is not a real estate agent. Lord Balfour gave me the land, and the response was, what right does a British lord have to give away my ancestral homes to the Jews? And then, oh, but the UN partitioned it. And the response was, yeah, the Jews bribed Ecuador and Guatemala, and they stole the vote. At that point, the Jewish students give up. They cannot argue for Israel. And so we felt, we in the David Projects, Charles Jacobs and myself, that we need to come up with another way of explaining Israel, the importance of Israel. At the same time, we had a student from Harvard whose, as I mentioned, grandfather was Iraqi, and he understood, and he educated me about the history. So we decided to bring Mizrahi speakers to campus. We brought Gina Waldman, who's a refugee from Libya. We brought some others, and we also brought Joseph Abdul Wahid. Joseph Abdul Wahid was the chief economist at Wells Fargo Bank in San Francisco, and he came, I remember he came to Harvard, and we advertised Joseph Abdul Wahid will talk about the Middle East conflict. And all these Arab students came into the thing. They were sure he's a Muslim. And he started speaking in Arabic, Salam Aleichem, and then he says, Yahud. What? And he said, I'm an Egyptian Jew. You know, he told them about his life in Egypt. And then I remember he was telling me that a young Egyptian student, Harvard student, came up to him afterwards and said, I don't understand it. I'm from Egypt. I thought the Jews left with Moses. So they didn't know very much about it. There weren't too many Jews left by the time she grew up. And we said, look, this is a great story. So we took these speakers around, but it's very expensive to take speakers around, especially from San Francisco and other places. And then I thought, why don't we do a video? Now, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm degree in engineering, MBA, CPA, nothing to do with this. But I said, it's a good idea. It's more scalable and we can reach more people. And I was in Israel. My daughter lives there, my youngest daughter, and she introduced me to a filmmaker, Michael Griefman, who was looking for work. I said, okay, I need a 10-minute video, which we're going to use to educate high school kids and college kids about Mizrahi. And what started out in 10 minutes was so compelling, so that I went back to the board and try to raise money to do a film. And that's how the film evolved from 10 minutes, because we just fell in love with the characters. It's all about the casting. And Michael Greenspan identified, in addition to our speakers, some amazing Mizrahis in Israel. So that's how it started. And we realized as we did the film, we wanted to achieve several things. Number one, we wanted to correct the impression that Jews in Israel come from Poland, Russia, and Brooklyn. So we wanted to make sure people understand the Jews are the indigenous people, not the Palestinians who come from Arabia, and that the Jews are a very diverse community. So that was one thing. And the other thing is we wanted to make sure people understand that the current narrative on campus, where the only refugees they know about are the Palestinian displaced refugees, which is not the complete story. So that was the motivation behind creating the film. And then it occurred to me that just as I was ignorant, most of the Jewish community in America was not aware of the story, okay? And was kind of frustrated that of all the programming in all the Jewish centers and synagogue, nothing about Mizrahi Jews, which is a significant part of Jewish history. It was just ignored. So the purpose became both to educate the Jewish community, educate college students, and the general community in America, the public, about the diversity and complexity of the Jewish experience.
So what has been your impression now after 17 years? Has the film succeeded in educating all these different audiences?
You know, you asked me before, what was my expectation? I would simply say they were exceeded. I never imagined that this would be as impactful as it turned out. I just didn't have such high hopes. I basically was hoping to reach Jewish day school students, Jewish students on campus, but it had a much wider impact. I'll give you sort of the punchline of this whole thing. And the punchline to me was when the US Congress passed a resolution in 2008 instructing the president and the State Department to always talk about Jewish refugees when they talk about refugees from the Middle East conflict. All right? And then eventually, the hardest part was to convince the Israeli government to acknowledge that. And it was a long process. I can tell you that Gina Waldman and I were invited by Danny Ayalon, who was Deputy Foreign Minister, I don't know, 2011, whatever. He invited us to come to Jerusalem to show the film to the foreign press. And I'll never forget it. We showed the film, and then there was a German reporter who said, Mr. Ayalon, you Israelis are pretty smart. Could you explain to me why you've never talked about this issue all these years? And I don't remember the answer, but there's no good answer. There's no good answer. It's a puzzle. I can tell you that when I spoke to the General Counsel of Israel consulate in Boston and San Francisco, they didn't get it. They did not get the point. So it was a battle, and I have to tell you that there was a gentleman by the name of Stan Ehrman. He and Gina walked around and did a tremendous job to get Congress to recognize it. The film was also shown in the British Parliament, the Italian Parliament. It's been translated to multiple languages. The fact that it won Best Documentary in Marbella, Spain, I have no idea how that happened. But more importantly, it won in Warsaw. I'm a Polish Jew. And it was bizarre to me when they called me up and they told me. So it exceeded anything I imagined. But I think the best part is that it's been a vehicle for schools and others like yourself to promote the story. I was shocked when I did the research that no one's made the film before. I couldn't understand why in 2004 no one's made that film. And,
why do you think this is so, that nobody made a film before you did?
I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, naturally, it would have been obvious for some refugee or child of refugees to do the story of their parents or grandparents. I'm not sure I understand why. I think I mentioned to you that Gina Waldman and I were in a Iraqi-Iranian synagogue in Los Angeles. There are quite a few in Los Angeles, Iranian-Iraqi synagogue. And we showed the film. And Gina said to challenge the people in the room, said, look, why does it take a Polish Jew to do this film and none of you made the film? I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. But I think part of the success of the film is because no one's made it. There was a need, a demand, and I sort of feel that with, I'm not a filmmaker, you know, I'm not an artist. I'm an engineer, I'm a business executive. So, but the topic I think was compelling and there was a need for it, a pent up need for it. So now I think I'm very proud of the film. I have to tell you that both my daughters married Iraqi Jews whose father was born in Baghdad.
Right.
So,
well, I can recommend that.
no, so that my daughter's in-laws really appreciate, and my grandkids who have a mixed Polish Iraqi heritage have a very rich sort of background. So at the point is it exceeded anything that I imagined beforehand.
The end of the film talks about the importance of this whole issue for peace. Do you think that it has, you know, really got through? Has the message got through of you know, bringing forth this whole issue in the political arena?
Well, I'll tell you that the first goal was to educate the Jewish community, Jewish students. And I think we actually developed a curriculum that was implemented in about 100 Jewish day schools in the US with the film. And the film is sort of now sort of standard vehicle for educating American Jews about a significant part of the Jewish community. So I think in that sense, I feel good about that. I mentioned to you that the film was screened in Indonesia yesterday, Monday, which is the largest, most populous Muslim country in the world. Okay, and it's very satisfying that that happened, and there are people who want to understand the story of the Jews from the Arab world, but my goal is to screen it in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. And I can tell you, we reached out to the rabbi of Dubai, a wonderful gentleman who has seen the film, who has screened the film in the synagogue in New York. And he's working, hopefully that will happen. That will be a major milestone. I also met with some producers from Al Jazeera in Israel a couple of years ago, and I told them, I'll believe in peace when you screen it in Al Jazeera. I'm still waiting.
I think Lulwa Kazum, who we saw on the clip there, says it very well. She says that we should talk about the points of connection between Arabs and Jews, but we should also talk about the points of division. Do you think that Jews are reluctant to talk about the points of division generally, and to kind of brush under the carpet a little bit the sort of more unpleasant side of the history?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to generalize about all Jews. I think that my sense was that Israeli government officials back in 2004, 2005 were reluctant to raise the issue of the Mizrahi refugees coming to Israel, given the way they were treated. I think there was kind of sensitivity. Let's not get into that issue of the discrimination that they suffered. So to some extent, there have been a reason not to go there, and let's just move forward. But I think that I'm not sure that's an issue today. I think in general, I've shown the film to Muslims, and amazing people, and they were in tears. I mean, it was upsetting to them to see how Muslims treated Jews. These were very decent Muslims. You know, we have an Arabic version that I'd love to screen to the Arab world. So, I mean, there's always hope, but it's not easy.
But do you think that there is this myth that, you know, there was a peaceful coexistence between Jews and Muslims, and that it'll take more than just a film to shift this perception?
Okay, so I'll tell you what I've learned by reading, studying, and all that. I think that Jews lived under Islamic rule in many places for a very long time, hundreds of years. And it's almost impossible to generalize. The point is that the dimitude, the condition under which Jews lived, was very much like Jim Crow laws in the South, highly discriminatory, both for Jews and Christians. Clearly, there were golden ages, whether in Spain for a while, whether in Iraq, I think you mentioned 20s and 30s, 1920s and 30s. But in general, there were second-class citizens, always at the mercy, and always relied on the king, the sultan, the ruler to protect them. Otherwise, they were very vulnerable. And sadly, the rise of nationalism, the breakup of the Ottoman Empire, resulted in a lot of violence against Jews. There were always pogroms once in a while, like all minorities suffer. And I think that just part of the historic record. I think Americans are trying to come to terms with slavery and the way blacks were treated after slavery. I've yet to see our countries willing to confront their history of mistreating of minorities, whether Jews, Armenians, or Christians. And that's an important step to achieving some sort of peaceful coexistence.
One might say that the mood on campus, especially in America, if anything, is worse for Jews today than it was 17 years ago when the film was made. How do you see this whole issue of the Jewish refugees helping, you know, sort of Jewish students who are today being faced with quite a lot of anti-Semitism on campus?
You're right. Sadly, the conditions have gotten worse. I think it's important to understand why they've gotten worse. In my opinion, having spent 20 years working on the problem, it's a combination of radical leftist faculty combined with radical Muslim professors and Arabs who've come into the system, and a large influx of Muslims, both international students and immigrants. And a lot of the energy and the hate comes from the progressives, radicals, and the Arab Muslim students. And Jews are outnumbered, and it's not a pleasant situation for them. They're shut down. Well, you know what's going on in the UK as well. So it's hard. It's hard that there's a kind of climate of censorship of any view that's considered not part of the accepted narrative of oppression, whatever narrative you follow, intercolonialism, imperialism, and all that. And it's hard to fight for any Jewish students. I mean, Islam was one of the biggest colonial empires in the world, far exceeding Rome. So the truth doesn't matter. It's all very much identity politics, and we're not winning, let's put it this way.
But surely the Jewish refugees are a key way to change people's minds, aren't they? Because I mean, here you have people of color who were oppressed, who are indigenous to the Middle East. Surely we tick all the boxes in that sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think JIMENA, the organization in San Francisco, has done a terrific job in promoting the multicultural nature of the Jewish community. And that undermines the accepted narrative of the European colonial people coming in to occupy Palestine. but it needs more energy, more resources, And
What about
I'm sorry to say it, Lynn. I'm disappointed. I'm very angry that the established Jewish leadership in the U.S. has not adopted this story, and that's to me that's a big problem. November 30th was designated by the Israeli government, and I've been talking to leaders in the U.S. to designate a week, a month, to talk about a significant part of Jewish history that is being ignored. Sadly, Jewish establishment here is too busy following certain progressive issues and ignoring the story of Mizrahi Jews.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a scandal. I don't know why. I think that it's a question of priorities. Quite frankly, right now, they're more concerned with Afghani refugees than they ever were with Mizrahi refugees.
Absolutely, yeah.
Odd, very odd.
Yeah, I think what you say applies to Europe as well. In fact, the leadership in the Jewish leadership, perhaps in Europe, has not promoted this issue the way it should. Some would say that Israel has not promoted this issue. You know, that when you hear Israeli spokesmen on TV, you know, you very rarely hear them bring up the question of Jewish refugees.
Yes, yes. And if Israel doesn't show an example, that's a problem for Jewish leaders here. But look, I think there's an ongoing effort to get Jewish leaders here to really do things that benefit the Jewish community, as much as Jews love to help everybody else. And this is a great example of a failure of Jewish leadership to deal with a major segment of the Jewish history and the Jewish community that's not getting the attention it deserves, and the story is not well known. And you're right, it's a great story. It checks all the boxes that would fit in today's multicultural world. Yet it's a failure of leadership. It's the only way, although Danny Ayalon, I think, who is the son of an Algerian Jew, was really heading in the right direction, but I don't think he's in government.
No, he's not. So do you have any plans to make a similar film in the future, or do you have any plans to promote this issue in the future?
So, no, I don't have any plans to make a film in the future. I tried to do sort of Forgotten Refugees 2, a follow-up film, but couldn't raise the funds. I think that I have friends who promote the film, they screen it in synagogues and elsewhere. But JIMENA obviously does a lot of that, and you do a lot of that, and we're all very grateful to you, Lynn. And I wish more people would adopt it. I mean, it's free. We don't charge anything.
Sure. Yeah, it's free. And I think that's made a big difference. Absolutely.
Because the whole point was, it was not a commercial enterprise. The whole point was to spread the word any way possible. And the fact that it's in 7 languages, including Indonesian now, we just need somebody like yourself in other countries to keep showing it.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to now ask my colleague Michelle, who's shown the film several times, to talk about her experiences and the sort of reaction that she's had when she's shown the film. Over to you, Michelle.
Oh, hi, Avi. It's really lovely to see you. I love the film. I've shown it so many times to all different organizations. It all started many years ago when I had Lynn show the local synagogue, and I was very evangelical about the film afterwards, and suddenly found myself showing it in SOAS, which is really like the hotbed of anti-Israel in the UK. It all starts there. And I had an amazing result. You know, I remember, and I'm not a scholar, I'm not academic, and I remember walking into this classroom and there were these students with their kafirs and everything, and I was really nervous. I'd taken a friend's father who had their story to tell to sort of back me up. But what was so amazing was at the end, the results from the students. They were like, they looked at their tutor and they said, why don't we know these stories? And it totally changed their perspective. I was invited back when it was Israel Apartheid Week at SOAS as well. And I got caught up in all these demonstrations as well beforehand when I was promoting it and sort of handing out leaflets and what have you. But, you know, we had a good response to it. The film is groundbreaking. And I want to know why we can't get it on Netflix and Amazon, BBC, PBS, because, you know, when you give people things, they don't always go to look at them. We can't always get to the right audiences. But I think with modern streaming, with Netflix, Amazon, Apple, we must try to go through those routes, because I think we can get into more homes.
What do you think, Avi?
You're absolutely right. We looked into it. It's a process. It takes time and money. And I would love to see it happen. And Michelle, if you want to work with me, Lynn, we can work together, and I'll talk to Gina. We'll figure out how to do that. There's Amazon streaming. There's a process, and there's some restrictions that anyway. But it's worth looking into. It's worth doing. And I'm so glad to hear what you were saying about SOAS. I'm not familiar with the word school. And that's what we need to do. We need to get in front of people, because many people are decent people, just ignorant. And we need to do more to get this story in front of them.
Yeah, we've got to. We've absolutely got to. So...
And one of the failures I feel that I never was able to raise enough money for the marketing and promotion of the film. Most of it has been pulled. People call me up. I get calls from professors that, oh, I'd like to stream the film. What do we have to do? Today, I got an email from a woman in Minnesota. She wants to screen it in December. More needs to be done to promote it, social media and everything. And you're getting me excited, because I got to talk to Gina and see how we can raise a campaign to promote the film.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in on that.
I mean, I wish I could. This is the film. Look, it's the first film I made. I'm not a filmmaker. I get some wonderful people helping me, especially Michael Greenspan, and there were some others who worked with it. But it's a bit dated, and I would have loved to have made an updated film. But where's the Mizrahi community?
Well, that's another question we have. I mean, the Mizrahi community must be amongst the most disorganized, and I say that as a Mizrahi. You know, I always say that actually it takes a few Ashkenazim to get us going, you know.
And that's why Lynn's got me behind her.
Okay, no, I know. Without the Ashkenazi, you know, people like yourself, people like Stan Ehrman, Henry Green, Erwin Kotler, Lawrence here, Michelle, who is Ashkenazi, if I may give the game away, or without all the Ashkenazim who've been pushing this issue, we wouldn't have got anywhere. And I just wonder what we can do to motivate the Mizrahi communities.
Well, I tell you that, and I've been out of it for a long time. I left the David Project back in 2005 and did some other things, and Gina, to a fair extent, has picked up the torch and is doing it. But I really think there's an opportunity to do more. It takes resources, and I'll certainly be willing to be involved to have it. And we went, quite frankly, we went to Chaim Savan,
who is an Egyptian,
in Hollywood.
yeah, Right. So he's a Mizrahi
Actually,
producer.
Joseph-
No, he's
yeah, he's an Egyptian Jew who did
Yeah.
extremely well, and he wasn't interested.
and why do you think that is?
I don't know. I can't speculate about other people's motives. I'm just disappointed.
Mhm. Absolutely. Jale asks, he's an Iranian Jew. Has the film been translated into Persian?
But I'm going to tell you a little story about Iranian Jews and Iran. So, you know, there are Jews in many countries, and I screened the film in Haifa at the Cinematheque, and people came up to me and said, "How come you didn't do the Iranian Jew story? There's nothing about Iran." I'm sorry. Go back. I screened in Haifa, and we had an Iranian Jew and a bit of Iranian story. He was a former president, Yitzhak Katzal, who some of you may know was accused of sexual harassment and resigned from office. So when he came up the screen, the audience, Israeli audience, booed. I immediately called Michael Grisham and said, "Get him out of the picture. This is a problem." So you don't see him, we replaced him. But people came up to me and said, "How can we do the Jews of Tunisia, the news of Lebanon, the news of Syria, Persia, which is a unique history, right?" I said, "There's not enough time, there's not enough money to do it." I was going to do subsequent stories. So yeah, I'm not aware it's been translated to Farsi, but it is in Arabic, it's in Russian, in German, Italian, but everything can be done.
Yeah. Okay. Vivian does say that the ASF, the American Sephardi Federation in New York, has also been very active, and yes, we must credit them with also doing their bit.
Is it Vivian Romani?
Hmm?
Which Vivian?
That's no, Vivian Levy, Aka Levy, I think. Yeah, the one in Miami.
Okay. No, listen. Yes, it's all true. We just need to get people who are willing to devote some resources to get the next stage of the effort done.
Mm-hmm. And don't you think it's also a problem that Ashkenazim think that this is a niche Sephardi issue, that it doesn't really involve the whole Jewish people?
That's not the reaction I've gotten. I give an example. I went to the Chautauqua Institute. I don't know if you're familiar with Chautauqua Institute.
No.
It's sort of a summer camp for adults in Buffalo, New York. Well, a lot of New Yorkers go there, and they have all sorts of wonderful intellectual programming in Chautauqua. And I showed it to 300 people. I'd say most of them come from the west side of New York, highly liberal, highly progressive audience. And they watched the film, and somebody said to me, "I don't get it. I read the New York Times, I watch CNN, I've never heard of these people." I said to him, "That's exactly right. Just think of what else you don't hear, if that's your source of information."
Exactly.
All right. So, yeah, no, but I think they were surprised that they thought they were knowledgeable. I think most people think they know what's going on. I don't fault anyone. I think it's our responsibility to get the word out. And I think people respond properly.
But don't you think it's a vicious circle? Because if you did write an article for the New York Times, they wouldn't publish it because it doesn't fit in with the accepted narrative.
Yeah, well, forget about New York Times. I won't get into that whole thing. But the point is that we have not done enough to educate the Jewish community, okay? And more needs to be done, and also the public. I mean, I'd love to see it get into public schools. Mm-hmm. In fact, JIMENA is working to get it in the story under the ethnic study program is being implemented in California. Mm-hmm. Multiculturalism, well, that's part of multiculturalism. You want diversity? Let me give you diversity of Jews. But look, if we don't do it, no one's going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, JIMENA, I mean, we must take our hats off to JIMENA in California for the sterling work that they do. And they've actually formulated a curriculum, haven't they, for schools? And that really should be applied across the board.
You know, I tell you what I did. my granddaughter was in 5th grade. She was 10 years old. And she wanted to share her heritage, Iraqi heritage, to Jewish school with a class. So I took the film, worked with a teacher, took out all the ugly stuff, Jews hanging and killing, all that, sanitized it so they can show it to 5th graders. And it's available to anybody. I gave it to JIMENA. Anybody can use it.
Yeah.
It takes marketing promotional effort. It just takes persistence and work.
Mhm.
Can you get into a British school, a Jewish British school?
It's quite hard, actually. It is hard. We're usually confined to the lunch hour, which is about 20 or 30 minutes, and the students come in and out munching their sandwiches. They're not really focused.
Well, it's a Jewish school. Don't they study Jewish history? Don't they study the Jews of Spain, Jews of Iraq?
They
Hillel?
don't. No,
No.
this is just beginning now. You know, to be included in the curriculum, but because we are majority Ashkenazi community in Britain, I think that is the problem.
It's also the opportunity for them to recognize how Eurocentric they've been.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah.
But, you know, what we found, it's all about relationships. You know, you have to have a relationship with the right people who have the power to do things.
Right, absolutely. In response to Rosalind Shoga, who says, can we come and show the film to the anti-Israel mob who come out of the anti-Israel cathedral towns of Salisbury and Winchester, the middle-class Christian do-gooders? Yeah, willing to show the film at any time to anyone, Rosalind. And I didn't think that Salisbury and Winchester were any more anti-Israel than anywhere else, but you've now opened my eyes. I think we do have a problem in the churches, haven't we? That some churches are so pro-Palestinian.
Well, I'm not sure they're so pro-Palestinian or anti-Jewish, because I don't see them caring about the Palestinians in Syria or Lebanon.
Mm.
You know, I've yet to meet somebody who's really pro-Palestinian. Most of them are mostly anti-Israel. I've been to many rallies on campus. I've yet to see one speaker talk about, let's build a beautiful Palestine. No, it's always about destroying Israel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And Richard Galber makes a very good point. He says it's necessary to get into the teacher training colleges,
Of
where
course.
teaching students are fed the anti-Israel narrative, which, yeah.
It's all true. And it's all about relationship with the right people who have power and persistence. Right? Because we're swimming against a tide. It's hard.
Mm-hmm. Right. But you are generally happy with the progress that's been made over the last 17 years.
I cannot say I'm happy. I can say that it exceeded my expectation a lot, significantly. And I wish that more was being done. I wish that we had more funds to promote the film and to get more people to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not happy, because you know what's going on in the world, and most people don't understand it. Most people have a lot of sympathy with Palestinian refugees. Okay, the fact that, as you know, the Mizrahi refugees did not dwell on their victimhood. They moved on, created a life. Okay, we didn't keep them in the Ma'abarot for 60, 70 years. All right, but sometimes good deeds are not recognized.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So is the top priority now? I mean, how do you see, what's our top priority? Should it be to raise funds for further projects?
There's the what and the how. The what, the priority is to get more people to understand that side of the conflict and the story. Okay, and it's important to get people with influence and power. Okay, it's not easy, but those people make a difference. Okay, the masses may not make that much difference unless you get them to volunteer to work on reaching people with influence and power.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so in England, you start with the Jewish leadership. If Jewish leadership doesn't get it, then it's hard.
Discuss all of this.
Now,
Just turn it off.
From
to
Australia.
get it,
Who's that?
to get anything done requires money.
Mhm.
But what we're trying to do is reach people who have influence so the story can get out, so people know before they make up their mind and make decisions about understanding the conflict.
Mhm. It seems that the climate has become much harder actually in politics in America, where, you know, for the Jewish community, even acts of anti-Semitism have not been really, I don't know, challenged by the Jewish community. Some people say that the Jewish establishment has not even been able to deal with that, let alone the Mizrahi issue.
Yeah, no, I think, in my opinion, there's a failure, a massive failure of Jewish leadership. Again, as a child of Holocaust survivors, I spent a lot of time trying to understand what happened in World War II to European Jewish leadership. They failed. And what happened to American Jewish leadership? And we know that they failed.
Mhm.
So leadership is critical to the success of any group. And to the extent that we have weak Jewish leadership in America, that's a major concern.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right. And
That
Dori,
doesn't change what we have to do.
absolutely, yes. Dori said that there should be a showing in Bahrain. I think you did say you'd like to see the
I'm
film
working
shown
in
in the
Dubai.
Gulf. Yeah, Dubai. Work on Dubai. Absolutely.
There's a
And-
synagogue there, or in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, one of them has a synagogue.
Yeah, one of them.
UAE has a synagogue in a long time.
Samish makes a good point. He says the information is out there in libraries, internet outlets, and other media platforms. The problem is not access to the information. The main issue is how to change opinions about such entrenched political views regarding the. Sorry, it's just jumped.
Yeah, but look,
The
I think
divide.
we have to separate the what from the how. The fact that information is out there is not good enough,
Mhm.
okay? It has to be promoted. You have to bring it attention, okay? So people can get the information. It's out there, doesn't mean they know anything about it. Now, it's not easy to change people's mind, but the first step is to provide them with the facts.
Yeah.
And you know, facts are not enough. There has to be some emotion, some other element to sway people. Because most people don't change their mind that easily.
How about we make a feature film, you know, with a Mizrahi hero, a story of expulsion, and, you know, something that would reach the mainstream, if you like.
Well, you know, if you can get Steven Spielberg and Sacha Baron, what's his name? Huh?
Sacha Baron Cohen, yeah.
Cohen, yeah. You know, we could have, and I get Gal Gadot, and we can have a great hit.
Well, let's do it, shall we?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
We
I'll
just
come
need
out of
to-
retirement.
Okay, well, just having a very quick look. I think.
Yeah, any more questions
Yeah.
through the chat tonight, please? I think Emil Cohen wanted to raise something, but through the chat.
Yeah. Okay, let's just see that. Yeah, of course, everyone has their own explanation for why we didn't hear about this story before. And you have, you know, you have mentioned the word discrimination, or we could say racism, or you could say Eurocentricity.
I really believe in my conversation that there was sensitivity about embarrassment by the Israeli government about raising the issue how Mizrahis were treated when it first came to Israel.
Although it's really all about how they were treated in the Arab world, isn't it?
It's both. I mean, of course, there's no comparison. There's no comparison. You know what it's like. But there's no good reason not to do it. There's none, zero.
Absolutely.
Because we don't have a chance to influence people to do the right thing unless they get all the facts. And I think that there are many decent Arabs, Muslims who would respond if they knew all the facts. But if they don't, there's a problem. And we have Jews who don't know all the facts. So anyway, look, I see no reason why the Israeli government and Jewish leadership in the UK or in France, there's a big Mizrahi community, or America, does not make it a top priority.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think we're all agreed. And I
That's
think
equal part.
I'd just like to tell everybody who's watching and listening to this that if their synagogue or their children's schools have not shown the forgotten refugees, they should make every effort to get it shown. And let's just reinvigorate this campaign. Let's get the message out to everyone. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you very much, Abby, for being our guest tonight, and congratulations on a brilliant film, and may it go from strength to strength. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Just to remind you that we have the 30th of November event coming up. It's at JW3 in London. If you want to attend in person, it'll be on the theme of the 65th anniversary of the expulsion following the Suez crisis, but you'll also be able to see it online, and full details are on the Harif website.
Right. Okay, can I interrupt? So Misha's made an excellent observation, which I wasn't making because I wanted to keep quiet. But in the beginning, when Israel was forming, David Ben-Gurion didn't want anyone to be able to turn around and say they were refugee, because everyone virtually was refugees. And that, for that reason—
Would you read out his comment?
We can read out Shamisha's, but for that reason, he didn't bring up the fact that there were refugees. He didn't want them to feel different from Israelis. He wanted everyone to feel like they were an Israeli. Do you want to read out Shamisha's comment?
So Samish has written, the very success of the Israeli government integrating the Jewish refugees from Arab lands is itself a factor of the silence. And see the Palestinians using their refugees as a weapon by not trying to better their lives.
All true. All true.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So just to say, it's the 30th of November at JW3 in London. And if anyone would like to watch the full documentary, The Forgotten Refugees, we have a link on our website, and you can also Google The Forgotten Refugees full documentary, and you can see it there. And I thoroughly recommend it.
And show it to all your Ashkenazi friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Top priority. Absolutely.
Make him feel guilty.
Okay, so thank you once again, Avi.
Thank you, Lynn, so much for hosting this and inviting me. Really appreciate it. And for promoting the film, which you have for many years.
Yeah, thank you. And we will continue to do so. I think are we going to unmute everybody
We'll
now?
stop the live stream now, and I will allow everyone to unmute themselves. Everyone can now unmute themselves. And by the way, Avi, the Ashkenazis involved with this were all originally engineers who then got their CPA equivalents. I'm the same. I never worked as either.
And there are Ashkenazim watching and taking part in this.
Yes, of course.
Don't worry.
I would like to mention something. I am Ashkenazi, Ralph, and
Yeah.
I'm Ashkenazi from Egypt.
Yes.
My ancestors came in Egypt in around 1880. So I'm a mixture in a sense, because even though I'm Ashkenazi, I was immersed into the Mizrahi and Sephardic community, and I do live in the United States. And right now, as I mentioned on the website, I'm in Boca Raton, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So if you want to get together, you represent the best of both worlds.
Exactly. So I was also, I gave a lot of presentations at many different synagogues in the New Jersey, New York area. And I also presented the movies Starting Over Again, that you might have seen, that was made by Elliot Malki, and won also an award at the discotheque in Jerusalem. And people were also completely flabbergasted, and especially because I'm Ashkenazi from Egypt, so they couldn't figure out why. But I kept on telling them that there were actually 20,000 Ashkenazi living in Egypt out of the 85,000. So Thank you. And I always liked your documentary that I showed a few times. Thank you.
Right, and now
Thank you.
Emil Cohen wants to ask a question now.
Emil, where are you?
Hi. My impression from the American Jews that I know, really, they don't think of Mizrahi. They're mostly very Ashkenazis. They don't think of Mizrahi. They don't acknowledge the term. They say anybody who's not Ashkenazi must be Sephardi. The term Mizrahi is never used, and I think that's only a term valid in reality in Israel and not throughout the world. We never call here in Britain, I never call anybody as Mizrahi.
What do you call
Either
them?
Sephardi or Ashkenazi.
I think we can discuss that till the cows come home. I don't know. I use it interchangeably. Yeah. I think the main, yeah, go on.
I call myself Mizrahi.
Yeah.
I'm not Sephardi. I'm Mizrahi.
Yeah.
I'm born Bahrain. And by the way, Avi, Bahrain would love to see that film. I think you should go and show it there. They have a synagogue there.
I give you permission to promote the film. I'll be glad to go to Bahrain. Just let me know when.
Could I say something
about it?
Olivia mentioned it. The thing is, Avi, I don't know. Lynn only put forward half my question. Why do you not go to Bahrain? And you mentioned Dubai. Do you realize that Nancy Kaduri, obviously of Iraqi Mizrahi origin, is an MP there? She was appointed to the upper house by the King of Bahrain. So I don't know whether Olivia knows her, but we know the family.
She's related to her. It's all right. Don't worry.
You know her too. So Avi, you've got people here who know somebody in Bahrain in the parliament. Use it.
It's all about relationships.
Yeah.
We're all authorized to make plans for me. I'll be glad to.
Thank you very much.
Take the time.
Ariel.
Yes, I just want good evening. Thank you for all the things. Voilà, de Jerusalem. You have in Morocco also, like somebody say now, you have about more than 16,000 Ashkenazic Jews in Morocco. Big part of them arrived there during the World War II because they want to go to Brazil or to neutral countries. So they came to Morocco, and in 1942, you know, the American came, and after they say, and other one came from Poland, from Hungary, from Romania. And they sell also at Galerie Lafayette of Casablanca a lot of discs in Yiddish. You can find them in Casablanca. I have some here that I bring from things that my mother, who is a Klinger Oppenheimer, so I am also half and half. And they are from Germany, they are also from Switzerland and Alsace. And she came also during World War II. Yeah. And that's it. And we are working hard for the people. And a lot of people today ask about the Jews of the forgotten country. And yesterday we see in the Cinematheque of Jerusalem the first film of Jean-Pierre Yeddo. You know Jean-Pierre Yeddo? Yes. So yesterday, before this was in Tel Aviv, to be also in Haifa, and he explained also what is Israel, because he discovered Israel was a communist by his father and all this. And in Israel, like the work, yes, of Avi Goldwasser. So his film also bring in France, it was very successful, and a lot of newspaper write about it. In Israel less, but people came to see his film, and he know about Algérie, Histoire à ne pas dire, and it's in parallel.
Can I just explain, Ariel, that this man, Jean-Pierre Liedot, is an Algerian Jew who was very anti-Israel and then ended up living in Israel. So that tells you the whole story. He made a very long film. I think it's 11 hours long. about his journey. He calls it a journey of identity, and we will actually invite him to speak for us. But I think it'll have to be in French. I'm sorry to disappoint all those who
quite a few people
don't
geared
speak.
up. We've got Spencer first, and
Yeah.
then Odette.
Okay.
I did not see any Israelis in this audience.
So
And
there are lots of Israelis.
One day should be involved in it.
Then Odette. Celia, there is a queue. Spencer was next, then Odette.
Thank you. I want to pay tribute to Lynn and to Michelle and the others. In 2014, Lynn put on the film and an explanation about the exodus of Jews from Arab countries, which was very successful, and appealed to schools to put it on the following year. I think where I am, in an Ashkenazi shul, we were the only one in 2015 that put it on. But we put it on with two people who had been expelled from Arab countries, one from Libya and one from Egypt, and we overfilled the place. And then we had another one with another film the following year. The Ashkenazim are interested if it's presented properly. And I think in our community, they know far more than they did 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Spencer for everything you've done, because you've been one of the few Ashkenazi shuls to actually make an effort to put this story forward and show the film. And you've done it several times as well, not just a one-off.
Yes, we try to do it annually.
Yeah. Odette, I think you're next.
Hi, I want to thank you, Lynn and Lawrence. I want to thank you again for very interesting topics. I always enjoy it and follow you 100%.
Thank you.
So I'm an Iraqi Jew. I lived in Israel, but I've been living in Canada for a long time. And I do remember up till maybe 20 years ago, even for us, we started being more educated. What's a Mizrahi as opposed to Sephardi? We were all lumped in. The Friends or the Ashkenaz, of course, didn't know, and they often got confused about everything. Now it's better with all the programs that's going on. I still go back to the core of the problem. One of it is us, whether we are Sephardics or Mizrahis in this case, is to spread our knowledge and education to our friends. But I always say, and with all respect to all the rabbis, whatever denomination they come, or educators, have you walked into a rabbi's office and seen one book, just one book of the history of the Jews, Arab lands, or even Sephardi? Sephardi, they know, of course, the expulsion, which is very important, but they really don't process it. Even when they see you, or even when they talk about Israel, oh, we know the Yemenites and the Ethiopians came and all that kind of stuff. It's not. We have lived, I've sent my kids to school and they know everything about Ashkenazi history, right? But, they know from me a bit of the history. They know where they came from, their parents, grandparents, but there's something wrong with this picture. I am sorry. And I don't know how, I know it's being dealt with, hopefully from Israel more and more so. The excuse is always this, we're making an event and most of the people are Ashkenaz. So that's therefore how we speak. Well, fair enough, but there is another thing. When you say Jewish, this is what I say, you cannot exclude another Jew from this Jew. You will have, but I think education, starting with the kids at school, is very important. Starting from the Jewish theological seminars and all the yeshivot, very important. And to make it is inclusive, not exclusive. That's all there is to it. And don't let them tell you just that they enjoy your kibbah and they